Okay, so you want to keep bees in medieval England. It is late summer, sometime in the 14th century, and the object in front of you does not look like a business. It is a woven hive, rounded at the top, light enough to carry when empty and cheap enough that much of its material may come from the countryside around you. Inside it, however, is a living storehouse. There is honey in the comb. There is wax around the honey. There is also a colony that may produce both again next year, if you do not take too much now. That is the temptation. Compared with cattle, bees need no winter hayfield. Compared with sheep, they require no shepherd following them across the commons. Compared with a mill, they need no water wheel, millstones, or expensive building. Make or obtain a hive, acquire a swarm, place it near sufficient forage, and thousands of workers leave each morning without wages. It sounds like one of the cheapest enterprises available to a rural household. Then you open the hive. The harvest is not simply waiting for you to collect it. Some of that honey is the colony's winter food. Much of the wax is the structure in which the next harvest must be stored. And with some medieval harvesting methods, taking the comb means sacrificing the colony itself. The materials may be inexpensive. The productive asset is not. That is the first thing the economics of medieval beekeeping hides. Your greatest cost may never appear as a payment in coins. It appears when a swarm escapes, when winter consumes the stores you hope to sell, or when today's harvest destroys next year's producer. So the real question is not how much honey one hive contains. It is how much value you can remove while preserving enough living capital to begin again. Before you can answer that, you need somewhere for the bees to live. There is no single medieval European hive. Depending on place and local practice, bees may be kept in woven skeps, wooden boxes, hollow logs, prepared tree cavities, or horizontal hives. Medieval images from southern Italy even show rectangular and cylindrical hives lying on their sides, with some rectangular examples raised above the ground. You are in England, where a woven hive is a plausible choice for a small household. It does not require a specialized stone building. It does require suitable material, skilled hands, and time. Cheap is not the same as effortless. A wooden alternative demands more. One surviving husbandry prescription describes a hive made from boards of beech, fig, pine, or oak, approximately 1 cubit wide and 2 cubits long. The exterior is coated with a mixture of ash and cow dung to resist decay. That description belongs to one historical tradition, not to every village in Europe. But it reveals the problem every beekeeper faces. The container must protect the colony while surviving rain, damp, wind, and years of use. A hive is only an empty vessel, though. It produces nothing until you fill it. You might obtain bees from an established keeper, discover a colony in a tree, or capture a swarm leaving another hive. Swarming is how a colony divides. A portion of the bees departs with a queen and searches for a new home. If you are ready with an empty hive and can gather them before they disappear, one productive colony may become 2. There is your first route to expansion. It costs less coin than buying a cow, but it is not free. Someone must watch during the swarming season. Empty hives must already be prepared. The swarm must be captured, settled, and kept. If it flies beyond reach, your prospective second hive has simply taken wing. No contract binds it. No court can order it home. Once the bees settle, the work changes from construction to waiting. They gather nectar from the surrounding landscape and turn it into honey. They also produce wax and build comb. Your landholding does not need to contain every flower they visit, which gives beekeeping an unusual advantage. A small household can draw value from a much larger area than it owns. But that advantage depends on access to a living landscape. Woodland edges, gardens, orchards, hedges, meadows, and flowering plants become part of your productive base even when they are not recorded as beekeeping assets. If local forage is poor, the hive cannot compensate through determination. More containers do not create more nectar. For the moment, conditions are favorable. The first colony fills comb, and by late summer you finally possess something that can be consumed, exchanged, brewed, or sold. Honey has several kinds of value at once. It is a concentrated food. It can sweeten dishes in a world where imported cane sugar exists, but is not an ordinary rural staple. It can be stored more easily than many seasonal foods. It can enter medicinal preparations. It can also be fermented into mead, transforming a raw product into a drink with social and commercial value. That does not mean every jar travels to a distant market. Honey can remain inside the household, move through local exchange, be acquired by a lord through customary rights or payments in some regions, or be brewed and consumed near where it was produced. A product may be valuable without ever appearing in a merchant's long-distance account. This matters because you are not choosing only between selling and eating. Suppose your household keeps the honey. You avoid purchasing or exchanging for something else that would have served the same purpose. That is real economic value, even though no coin enters your hand. Suppose you sell it. Now the price must cover the trouble of preparing it, carrying it, finding a buyer, and accepting whatever measure and quality judgment the market uses. Suppose you brew it into mead. You may create a more prestigious product, but brewing requires vessels, fuel, labor, and time. Added value comes with added cost. And suppose you leave it untouched? That looks like no income at all. Yet it may be the most profitable decision you make because honey left for the bees is winter feed for the colony that can generate next year's harvest. A hard winter makes this choice visible. The colder and longer the season, the more stores the bees may need. Honey in the hive may look like inventory, but not all inventory is available for sale. Some of it is fuel for the machinery, and the machinery is alive. Take too little, and your household gives up immediate value. Take too much, and spring may arrive to a silent hive. Your first good harvest creates exactly the wrong kind of confidence. The hive was inexpensive. The bees fed themselves. Honey now sits in your vessel. If one colony can do this, 10 must be better. So you prepare more hives for the next swarming season. This is where medieval beekeeping begins to resemble a real growth business. You do not expand principally by manufacturing more bees. You expand by preserving strong colonies, capturing their swarms, and giving those swarms empty homes. Each successful division increases future capacity without requiring the purchase of a large animal. But growth changes your bottleneck. With one hive, you need a container and a colony. With several, you need enough forage, enough time to observe them, enough empty hives at the correct moment, and enough winter stores across the whole group. You also have more value concentrated in one place. A lost swarm is a missed opportunity. A stolen hive is not merely stolen honey. It is stolen production for future seasons. Then comes the harvest decision. Some historical beekeeping systems used destructive methods, particularly when comb was difficult to remove from fixed hives. Selected colonies might be killed so that honey and wax could be taken thoroughly. Other colonies were retained as stock hives to survive winter and produce future swarms. It would be wrong to say that every medieval harvest killed every colony. Hive designs and practices varied, but where destructive harvesting was used, your accounts contained a brutal choice. One hive can be treated as a continuing asset, producing uncertain future returns. Or it can be liquidated. Killing a colony may allow a more complete harvest now. You recover honey, comb, and wax without preserving that particular population. But next spring, the empty hive must be refilled from a captured swarm or another source. What looks like a large profit may partly be the sale of your productive capital. That distinction is easy to miss because the capital is not land, iron, or timber. It is a population of insects whose replacement value may never be written in coins. You decide not to destroy every colony. Some are designated as stock. From these, you expect winter survival and new swarms. Others may be harvested more aggressively. Immediately, your impressive pile of honey becomes smaller. Some remains with the stock colonies. Some stays in the household. Some may satisfy an obligation or customary claim, depending on the terms under which your family holds land. Only the remainder is truly available for market. This is where honey and wax separate into two different businesses. Honey is the obvious product. You can taste it. You can pour it. Buyers understand its immediate use. Wax is less conspicuous, but in late medieval England, it connects your small rural holding to one of the largest institutional systems in the country, the church. From approximately the 14th century into the 16th, English demand for beeswax rose with changing forms of Christian devotion and religious observance. Wax provided a material for lights whose purpose was not merely to illuminate a dark room. Candles could be part of worship, offerings, commemorative practice, and the visible life of churches. A tallow candle can make light, but beeswax has different qualities and religious associations. The demand for it reaches beyond the needs of your household. That does not mean the parish priest automatically appears at your door with a bag of silver. The actual route may vary. Raw wax can pass through a local buyer, merchant, religious household, or specialist candle maker. A church may purchase wax, or it may obtain finished candles. Large institutions and towns can support more specialized processing than a single village household. Your wax therefore enters a chain. You remove comb from a harvested hive. Honey is separated for food sale or brewing. The remaining wax is cleaned and consolidated. A buyer gathers small quantities from producers like you. A candle maker turns a dispersed rural byproduct into a standardized object. A church, religious institution, household, or wealthy customer purchases the result. The final candle may be much more valuable than the raw wax you supplied because the chain adds collection, purification, skill, transport, and market access. This explains a historical puzzle. Surviving manorial records do not always show a vast, neatly organized beekeeping industry. Yet the quantity of wax consumed in medieval religious life had to come from somewhere. Economic historians have argued that much of the supply may have been produced by very large numbers of small domestic keepers who left only faint traces in formal estate accounts. You are one of the almost invisible producers. Your hive may never appear as a major asset in a lord's ledger. Your name may never enter a merchant's correspondence. But wax from thousands of households can converge upon towns and religious institutions. The market is large because production is scattered. That is good news for demand, but not necessarily for your margin. The church's need for wax does not give you direct access to the church's purse. Whoever aggregates, transports, cleans, or manufactures the wax occupies a stronger position in the chain. You possess a small amount of irregular raw material. The buyer possesses connections to repeat customers. If you must sell quickly, the buyer can wait. If your wax is dirty or mixed with debris, the buyer discounts it. If you are far from a market, transport absorbs part of the value. The brightest candle in the church may begin in your hive, but not all the money travels back to you. Still, wax changes the calculation of harvesting. A comb is no longer merely the inconvenient container around honey. It is a second product with a different customer base. Honey demand depends on food, brewing, medicine, household taste, and local exchange. Wax demand is strengthened by institutions that may continue consuming it, regardless of whether your own family wants more sweetness. Two products from one colony provide some protection, but only some. Both outputs still depend on the same bees. The following spring tests your plan. One stock colony survives strongly and sends out a swarm. You have an empty hive ready. By evening, your productive capacity has expanded. Another hive does not recover. Perhaps insufficient stores were left. Perhaps the weather turned against it. Medieval keepers could observe symptoms and behavior, but they did not possess modern knowledge of pathogens, parasites, or colony biology. A dead or weakened colony therefore combines economic loss with uncertainty. You may know what happened without knowing precisely why. A third swarm leaves before you can secure it. On parchment, 3 stock colonies might suggest 3 future producers. In practice, you have 1 successful expansion, 1 failure, and 1 departure. Biological capital refuses to behave like a row of storage jars. Weather then changes the market from both sides. A poor season reduces what the bees can gather. Your saleable honey falls because less enters the hive and more must be reserved for survival. Other keepers face the same conditions, so local supply may tighten. Prices could improve precisely when you have less to sell. A favorable season reverses the problem. More honey and wax become available, but neighboring producers may also bring more to market. Abundance improves output without guaranteeing the same increase in income. The number of hives is therefore a misleading measure of success. What matters is the number of productive colonies, the food they can gather, the portion you can safely remove, and the market you can actually reach. Now the rent is due. This is the point where a charming sideline meets the structure of medieval rural life. Your household may owe rent for land, customary dues, labor services, payments in kind, or some combination shaped by local tenure. Royal taxation is another matter and does not operate as a simple annual tax on every hive. Medieval English taxes varied over time and could assess movable property or income, especially when political authority demanded extraordinary revenue. Rent, customary obligation, tithe, and royal tax are not interchangeable. Nor is there evidence for one universal English tax specifically imposed on medieval beekeepers. But every obligation has the same practical effect at your door. Part of the household's production or purchasing power must leave. Can the bees cover it? The honest answer is that no single medieval calculation works for every farmer. Surviving evidence does not provide one matched account containing hive numbers, yields, wax and honey prices, winter losses, rent, dues, taxes, and household consumption for the same keeper in the same year. So you cannot truthfully say that a certain number of hives always pays a certain rent. You can, however, see the conditions under which beekeeping helps. If the hives are made largely from local material, the colonies multiply through captured swarms, winter losses remain limited, and you have reliable access to buyers, then much of the return comes from labor and biological growth rather than heavy cash investment. Honey can replace household purchases or be sold. Wax adds a second stream linked to religious and urban demand. In that case, the apiary may provide the surplus that turns an otherwise difficult obligation into a manageable one. But if you count all harvested honey as revenue, you deceive yourself. The portion retained for winter is not profit. Honey consumed by your household is useful, but it is not coin for a collector who insists on coin. Wax waiting for a buyer is inventory, not payment. And a hive emptied by destroying its colony may produce a large harvest while leaving you poorer in future capacity. Your true surplus appears only after the bees have been fed, replacement colonies have been secured, household needs have been met, and the product has reached someone willing to exchange for it. The rent exposes an even deeper problem. Beekeeping may require little money to begin, yet its returns arrive on nature's calendar while obligations arrive on a legal calendar. A landlord does not postpone a due date because your colony failed to swarm. A tax demand does not disappear because rain kept bees from flying. A candle maker may need wax at a time when yours is still tied up in comb. This mismatch between biological time and payment time is more dangerous than the cost of the hive. You now face a choice. Harvest aggressively and convert more of the apiary into immediate honey and wax, or preserve more colonies and accept a smaller payment today. The first option protects the household from the present demand. It may also reduce next year's number of stock colonies. The second protects future production. It may force you to meet rent or dues from grain, livestock, labor, borrowing, or another source. Neither choice is foolish. The correct one depends on reserves. A household with grain stored, another marketable craft, or livestock to sell can afford to preserve more colonies. A household already short of food or coin is pushed toward liquidation. Poverty changes the most profitable long-term decision into an impossible short-term decision. That is how a small problem expands. One weak harvest reduces honey available for sale. To meet the obligation, you harvest more deeply. More colonies are lost or fewer stores remain. The next spring begins with less productive capacity. Fewer colonies produce fewer swarms. Your opportunity to rebuild shrinks at exactly the moment you need it most. The failure did not begin with a costly hive. It began with a payment deadline. The opposite chain is also possible. You preserve several strong stock colonies. A favorable spring produces swarms. Empty hives are ready, so you capture them rather than watching them disappear. More colonies create a larger combined output. Honey supports the household, and wax reaches a buyer connected to candle production. Because another part of the farm covers the rent, you are not forced to liquidate the apiary during a poor year. The bees begin to finance their own expansion. That is the sensible adaptation. Do not treat every hive alike. Some colonies are your breeding and overwintering stock. Some can be harvested more heavily. Some output remains insurance in the form of food stores. Empty hives are prepared before swarming, not after. Honey and wax are directed toward different uses rather than sold indiscriminately to the first buyer. Diversification occurs inside the hive and outside it. Honey may go to household consumption, local exchange, sale, medicine, or mead. Wax may move toward chandlers and religious consumers. The apiary itself remains only one part of a mixed rural economy. Grain, animals, wages, craftwork, and customary rights absorb shocks that bees alone cannot. This is not modern portfolio theory in a straw basket. It is simply what the obligations force you to learn. A household survives more easily when no single weather-sensitive product must satisfy every need. From here, 3 futures can grow from the same decision. In the favorable one, you retain enough stock colonies, capture new swarms, and keep empty hives ready. Weather provides sufficient forage. A nearby town or regular buyer gives your wax a dependable route into candle making, while honey is divided between household use and sale. The apiary remains modest, but its surplus helps meet rent and occasional demands without consuming large quantities of coin to maintain. In the ordinary future, some colonies flourish and others vanish. Wax sells, but through an intermediary who keeps part of the added value. Honey reduces household expenses more reliably than it produces cash. The bees contribute to rent rather than paying it alone. Every year requires the same discipline. Do not confuse full combs with free surplus. In the breaking future, a poor season is followed by a hard winter. Too much honey is removed to meet an immediate obligation, and too few stock colonies survive. The next swarming season fails to replace them. Empty hives remain cheap and useless. To restart, you must wait for another swarm, obtain bees from someone else, or abandon the activity. The first warning was not the dead colony. It was the moment you had to sell winter stores. Late summer returns, and once again the hive stands in front of you. Honey fills part of the comb. Wax holds it in place. Somewhere beyond the village, that wax may eventually burn in a church brighter and more valuable after passing through the hands of collectors and candle makers. At the beginning, the hive looked like an almost costless machine. Bees found their own food, made 2 saleable products, and multiplied themselves. Now the same hive looks different. Part of the honey belongs economically to the colony, even while it sits on your land. Part of the wax may be worth more to the market than its rural producer can capture. The swarm is not a nuisance but your cheapest path to growth. And the greatest danger is not the price of straw or timber. It is being forced to exchange future colonies for present payment. Medieval beekeeping can offset rent and dues when successful colonies produce a genuine surplus and when that surplus can reach a buyer. It cannot guarantee them. Its low material cost is balanced by weather, winter stores, lost swarms, uncertain markets, and the continual need to preserve living capital. You do not truly make money by emptying the hive. You make money by deciding what must remain inside it.